Hail, Guerrilla Social Workers! Welcome to another episode of the Guerrilla Social Work Podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Alpha Counseling and Treatment. Alpha Counseling and Treatment is the largest and most respected provider of forensic clinical psychotherapy for justice-involved clients in the state of Utah. Please visit our ever-humble and unassuming website, utahsbesttherapy.com, and connect with us today. Our episode today is part of our Penitentiary Pundit series, and we welcome Jamie Newsome and Eric Willoughby into the studio and have a discussion with them about evidence-based practices as well as the University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute. Jamie and Eric were with us for this last week, training us in two of their curriculum as part of a $1 million grant that we have for Weber County, targeting reentry clients from the Weber County Jail returning to our community in Weber County. Excellent conversation with these two. This is top-notch information for anybody who's wanting to think about trainings that they're going to be doing to improve their program, or if you're just interested in what actually works in reducing recidivism. We talk a little bit about how some therapists are against evidence-based practices and maybe some remedies to that to have a conversation with them. Excellent talk as far as all the content goes. We're still working out some of the audio gremlins. There was a spot in there where, for the life of me, I cannot understand why it stopped recording, but you can't always bat 1,000. So anyways, as always, we thank you for your listenership and dedication. We could not do this without you. And like an arrow from a bow, here is episode number 36. Okay, all right. Well, hey, thank you guys for your time coming here today. This noise is probably going to sound a little weird because I think this is our very first podcast ever wearing masks, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, and so Jeff and I are interviewing Jamie Newsome and Eric Willoughby. Did I say that right?
You did,
dude. There's a Netflix special on the Willoughbys, right?
It is on the Willoughbys. I haven't watched it yet, but
that is your namesake. And you haven't watched it?
No, I'm just waiting for a special time.
Especially with all your pop culture references that you've had during this training. It's like
it might have a lot of 80s and 90s Full House references and
right?
throwback tunes.
Yeah, I feel not so old around you, like, because you reference those things and I'm like, I know what he's talking about.
It's a gift. We connect with our audience.
Right. When I do that, when I make references like that, I did that not too long ago. I was in class and I was like, guys, you will not believe this. This was like a year ago. And I said, they're coming out with a Bill and Ted's 3. And everybody's like, what? I'm like, you don't know who Bill and Ted are? And I was super disappointed. So yeah, exactly. A lot of people won't even know who that is. So, but and then we're at the Weber County Sheriff's Office recording this as well. So this will be a first for a lot of us. But why don't I just maybe ask you guys to introduce yourselves, where you're from, and what you do, and we'll kind of start from there. We do have a return guest, so maybe you could kick us off there, Jamie.
Okay, sure. I'm Jamie Newsome. I'm employed at the University of Cincinnati Corrections Institute, and my technical title there is research coordinator, so a lot of what I do is research-oriented stuff, helping design studies and research projects, applying for grants, lots of data nerd work, and writing articles and reports and things like that. But occasionally, like this week, I get to get out in the field and hang out with folks who are doing the work on the ground, and that's what I really love, so I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah, right in the middle of a pandemic.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm dedicated.
Right, yeah. How many of the other trainers are out and about doing their thing in other places?
Maybe like 5.
How many trainers do you guys have all together?
I think 8 or 9.
So you guys are still going pretty strong, like most of you guys are out and about, still getting after it despite this COVID nonsense.
We're trying, and I think trying also to do virtual options. That same model, you guys will incorporate role plays into how you intervene with offenders or justice-involved individuals to help them change their behavior and master new things. So we use that in our training to help you learn, but we also encourage you to use that in your work with your clients, because it works. There's a lot of research out there that shows that we call that social learning model, and we find that when you teach someone something new, it could be anything, it really helps to show them how to do whatever the new behavior is, and then have them practice it, and then give you feedback. You would give feedback to kind of help coach them along, and then through that process, they learn to acquire the new skill. So one of the things I've seen Eric do this in a training, and I think it's a really clear example of what that would look like. He'll do like this airplane activity. Do you care to like talk a little bit about how that works?
The coaching
Yeah,
activity?
yeah.
So I think kind of stepping back is when you look at the role plays, we're helping the clients, the justice involved individuals, create a safe environment for them to anticipate, okay, when I get out of here, what's going to be something that's going to be really difficult for me to manage? Is it dealing with a really tough family situation, dealing with friends, if it's linked to substance use and things along those lines? And we wanted to really tie it into the risk assessment, say what do they really truly need, and how can we target these areas? So it teaches them, okay, if there's a situation where I'm generally impulsive, how do I take my emotions and lower them? And it just creates real life scenarios for them that they can practice. And if they fail at the role play in the institution, that's okay, because we can give them that feedback to say, okay, maybe you should try it this way. So when they get out back into society, we're looking at the public safety, that if they can control themselves, it keeps them safe, it keeps our neighbors safe, it keeps us safe, it keeps their family safe, and all around it keeps everyone in a good spot. So Jamie was alluding to this airplane activity that we do in our continuous quality improvement training, where what we end up doing is we have one person who is a coach, one person who is well, first of all, it backs up as everybody builds a paper airplane. All right, so if the four of us are in a room, we're going to toss them across the room, and whose paper airplane goes the farthest is the coach. If Jamie's basically goes to her feet or behind her, we laugh at her. And then,
which might actually happen.
Yeah, which I've seen it. And but she would be the one who's going to be coached. So she lacks this skill in building paper airplanes. So we take this person who's proficient in building paper airplanes, and we're going to teach her, all right, here's how you build this paper airplane. And then the two of you would just observe and kind of take notes. So kind of the element of that one is teaching someone, here's this new skill you can use, and it's something as fun as a paper airplane, but it shows, number one, how important it is for us to have relationships, to build rapport very quickly with the folks that we're working with. It also looks at what are the most effective ways to help teach people. So it's giving clear-cut instructions, modeling for them, giving them social reinforcement, some feedback along the way, encouragement. And then after Jamie gets her airplane, hopefully it goes across the room, or at least it goes, at least 4 or 5 feet to show you've made some progress in what you've done. So that really kind of lies in the same aspect of when we're working with the clients, because so many of them they've been thrown away from society, let's be honest. They lock them away, throw away the key. And we train our facilitators in the way of how do we work with them and not against them, and make them feel supported for the first time in their lives.
So today, one of our therapists, April, taught you how to make green bean casserole.
I'm ready. Yeah. I am ready. Yeah.
I'm kind of deducing that that's a piece of this kind of the same paper airplane concept.
Yeah.
I noticed that did get a lot of people involved in it. People were tuned in. You've got you're a pretty charismatic dude. You're good at. I told you that earlier. You're a good teacher, and
Thank you.
Able to get people's attention, crack jokes. Jokes within the process of April showing you how to make this casserole. But so I noticed that you started that out by asking, what did you ask? Who has some skills?
What are some skills maybe we teach our kids? What are some skills that we possess in ourselves? And just kind of built on that one. And cooking, I'm not good at. That was not a lie.
That was real?
That was real. Yeah. No, I mean, I can't spoiler alert, I can make Pop-Tarts without burning them, but
So that part was
that part was a little fabricated for fan fun there. You know, we got to hook people in for that one and say, this guy's really terrible at what he does. But yeah, so it was just this very basic element. And what it does is it supports, when we facilitate these sessions, why each process in our sessions are so important, that we introduce these key concepts and we sell, right, of this product that we're teaching. So the person on the other end of the table says, oh, I need to have this. I need to have this skill. And then go into that process of, now I'm going to teach you the concrete steps of this. I'm going to show you first how to do this. I'm going to be an effective model. And then I'm going to practice. And yeah, I deliberately messed things up of throwing soup cans and, you know, things along those lines. But it shows the importance of, in the moment, why feedback is so important, that, you know, if we don't catch those things, people could go downhill real fast. So same with cooking. If I don't cook this right, I'm going to ruin Thanksgiving for the family. But also the increasing that motivation, helping people see their capacity, and help that self-efficacy to say, you know what, I can see myself using this stuff in real life. And the purpose of that one is to transfer that to our clinicians, to the justice-involved individuals, of any sessions that we're teaching them, that there's not only research behind it, but we can make it fun.
Yeah.
Let's go
I was just going to add, you had asked about the research, and we've done a lot of research. A lot of the model is built on that social learning theory, which has been around for a long time, but there's more current research that's coming out that's showing when you're working with justice-involved individuals and you're trying to teach them new skills, using those role plays makes a huge difference in the recidivism rates. And I think part of that is just, you step back and think about how people learn things, and the way that people often work with people in the justice system, it's like, well, just don't do that anymore, right? And so, like, that's not helpful. If I'm telling you to do something that you've never done before, and I tell you, like, well, just do that, you're going to be like, okay, well, like, you're not really prepared for that. So it'd be like telling your kid when they're small, like, well, just tie your shoes so you don't trip and fall. But nobody teaches their kid to tie shoes that way. And even if you're tying them for them at first, like doing that modeling piece, at some point you got to let go of those shoestrings and have them pick them up and start doing it, or they're not going to learn it, right? And they're not going to be able to do it if they're at school and their shoe comes untied. They're not going to be able to reach down and tie them themselves. So at some point, like, you've got to do that step, and you've got to have people practice and try, and you've got to be there to kind of give them that feedback and help them establish that skill so that they're equipped to do it on their own. But a lot of times in the criminal justice system, we don't do that. We just tell people, like, just do things differently in the future and assume that they're just going to be able to piece all that together, when in reality that might not just be realistic for those folks.
You know, that's helpful for me to hear as a trainer of this. You know, I've had an easier time getting the clients to buy in to the whole idea of a role play. You know, I'll be running a group, and, you know, it'll, you know, get to one of the modules where we're doing role plays, and, you know, I'm like, probably the easiest thing I do is I'm just willing to make an ass of myself, and, you know, and not be shy about it, and, you know, I throw myself fully into it, and the clients are immediately on board. But I've noticed that when it comes to training staff, I don't want to, like, say that staff are, like, resistant, like, no, I'm not going to do it, but you can see the skepticism, or and I think a lot of it is the lack of maybe just self-confidence, because that's what I kind of felt when I first got trained in this, is, you know, I sort of had my way of running groups. I felt, you know, fairly proficient, didn't really have much of, like, a concrete direction like CBI, like the CBI groups have enabled. But yeah, I would feel myself, like, almost wanting to give myself an excuse to, like, I don't know if we'll have time to get to role plays today, or whatever it is. And I can see some of that same hesitance in our staff, and I may be recognizing that I haven't done enough to, like, really sell it to them and make them, like, experience it and feel it the way they would with, like, a paper airplane contest or something. You know, It's like one thing to, like, stand up there and teach a social skill, or explain it, like do this, this, and this. Then a whole nother, like put yourself live into a situation and actively do it. And sometimes getting maybe some of the more newer, inexperienced, or maybe more meek staff to get into that. Like before, in previous trainings, all I'd really do is I'd point to that bar graph of that meta-analysis that would show that, you need risk, need, and responsivity to address, to get the greatest benefit. Mm-hmm. But that's all I had really in terms of being able to sell the role plays on it. But this is like, it makes them feel, or allows the therapist in training to feel that, oh yeah, okay, I get why we're doing this now.
And I think part of the process is, a lot of times when you have newer staff or people that have had unpleasant experiences, they're thinking of the absolute worst person in the entire world. Maybe they saw on TV or a movie or something like that. I think of the guy from The Green Mile. I forget what Billy, whatever his name was.
The dude that stomped on the mouse.
Yeah,
Percy.
Percy. But the inmate. I can't think of his name. It'll come to me later on, and I'll be like, "Can you?"
Bill?
Wild Bill. Yeah, there it is. I just failed on the pulp trivia there, but I think a lot of times people think, "Oh, that's who we're dealing with," but. At the end of the day, when you're building that relationship with the clients and the justice-involved individuals in that group, they start to look forward to those groups. They might act like, oh, this is dumb. But at the end of the day, if they're scheduled to go to group and group gets canceled, they get upset because what else are they doing throughout the day but maybe sitting and watching TV? So they get this interaction with us where they get reinforcement and things along those lines. But as confidence grows in people and they say, you know what, once they start facilitating these groups and the participants are like, yeah, this applies to me, I get this. And once the participants are really bought in, groups can be a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing is people are like, oh, these role plays aren't real. But if you let it be, real for the participants instead of some fabricated, half an hour sitcom like we're going to be best friends at the end. No, it's not real life, but we want to look at how can we at least reduce that risk in that moment. And that's, some of those elements that we look at. And, when we look at, a lot of times we look at when they get back out into society. Well, if people are starting off in institutions, we can see if we start using these skills inside the institutions, the payoff is less conduct reports, less physical altercations. So not only are we keeping, preparing them for when they get out, but we're keeping ourselves safe within the institutions.
Yeah, it's what's kind of crazy to me, and this was just like I guess just an observation that I made, and I don't know, I do this a lot, like I compare things to sports at times, mm-hmm. But so even like it's so intuitive when it comes to something like a sport when you're demonstrating a skill to teach in the exact way that you guys are teaching. So like I think about when I don't know if you guys knew this, but Jeff is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Huh. So
yeah,
like if you know anything about UFC, that means he's a legit badass and could probably take all three of us on at the same time. But when he teaches me anything, the first thing he does is show it to me. And that's like and there's no and it's not because he's like, oh, I'm going to do this CBI style. Or it never came to his mind. He just said, I'm going to first show this to you. Then I'm going to break it down really slow. And then I want you to do it really slow. And then I'll explain every piece of what I'm doing. So 10 minutes later, we're still talking about the same move that he demonstrated in less than 5 seconds, And we're still going through that. And I think, okay, what if we went back to traditional ways of how therapeutic practice goes and how people learn? Like, okay, I'm gonna tell you all about this thing, and then you go do it. Then you come back and tell me how you did that. Like I just watched that new documentary with Michael Jordan. What was that?
The Last Dance?
The Last Dance.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, okay, if I was Phil Jackson and that was my coaching style. So I told Michael Jordan what to do, and he came into my office, and I said, go do this. And then he went and did it. And then he came back to my office and told me how it went. And that was our coaching style. I was like, dude, that would be the dumbest thing ever. Like, that would be the stupidest way on planet Earth to teach somebody a sports skill. So I just don't understand why in behavioral health, when we're doing something it is a skill. It is a skill that we're teaching people. And even the therapists, we're teaching them a skill, or the facilitators rather. They can be therapists and whatnot, but they're facilitating a group and we're teaching them a skill, and why would we ever expect that to be the same way? Like, I'm going to tell it to you, you go and do it, you come back and tell me how it went, and then somehow you're going to get better at it. Whereas I'm going to break it down for you, you're going to know it piece by piece, I'm going to watch you do it, I'm going to give you feedback, as you're doing this, and then we're going to do it again. I just don't know I don't know why that's so difficult for people to grasp that that's the good way to go about it.
Yeah, we certainly hear the same resistance. I know you guys have started training and doing that on your own here, and we hear the same stuff when we train, that people are like, nah, this isn't my style. I hear that a lot. It might work, but it's not my style. This is not how I like to teach things. I'm like, okay, but there's loads of research that shows that it works, so it's not necessarily about, like, you going to group and having an experience that's like tailored for you as the facilitator, but you're trying to help other people, so you have to do what works for them, not necessarily, I mean, have your style, of course, and build your skill set, but if you come to group with that kind of mindset that, I want to do this my way, whether that's what's best for everybody in the room or not, then you're not really helping them, right?
That's a common criticism of evidence-based practice that I wanted to see your guys' opinion on, is that evidence-based practice denigrates clinical expertise. Like, my clinical expertise and my experience in this field, regardless of how long, should outweigh this evidence-based practice. And so when somebody says that's not my style, I guess the assumption on that end is my style is superior to that. And again,
or at least equivalent.
Right, or at least equivalent. And I'm wondering, why might that just not be the case? Or why might that be not a great way to approach therapy?
Oh, man. Well, lots of reasons are going through my head right now.
I think bottom line is change is difficult, and I think a lot of times people are looking for that silver bullet in corrections. That one intervention is going to change the entire world, where going back to your sports analogy, is the more folks are practicing this stuff, the better. If we think about it this way, is one of my fails of when I was working at the facility is I would create a treatment plan and say, hey, read this paper and then write a report and give it back to me. Now you're not going to commit crimes, right? And all it was saying is doing book reports, and there's nothing wrong with that self-discovery, right? But we're not really it's that face-to-face interaction that's teaching them those things, and again, using to see where that pendulum's swinging, to see that cognitive behavioral interventions, cognitive behavioral therapy is what works. And and it's when we're looking at that theoretical changing of that guard, it's hard for some people to try new things because they've been doing some of the same things over and over again, not discounting their heart's in the right place, as what Jamie was alluding to. Unfortunately, the research shows it's just not as effective long term.
Yeah, and so I'm super nerdy, right? Because I'm a researcher, and I would say that
I wouldn't call you nerdy.
I would say that if somebody came to me and said, I've been doing therapy for 20 years, 30 years, and I'm telling you that my strategies work, and they're different from what you're training me in, but my strategies work, and I'm not willing to let them go. My response to that would be like, you might be right, but let's put it to the test. If you think that, and you think that what you're doing is effective, that's testable. And if you are doing something effective, and something that would work, and something that would work better than what I'm presenting to you, then let's put it to the test and see. Because if you're right, wouldn't you want to share that with other people? Wouldn't you want to share those strategies so other people could make the same difference that you're making? And if you're not right, and it's not really working, wouldn't you want to know that?
Has anybody ever taken you up on that offer?
No.
Of course not.
No. Part of the issue is so let's just give the therapist you're talking about that says that 30, 40 years they've got it in the bag. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt and just rest on the assumption that, okay, you know what, they do in fact have an effective way of delivering things. Well, it's Mace, even before the CBISO stuff, Mace he's a great facilitator, good at running groups. And the thing is that I I can do groups my way, but I can't do what Mace does. I can try to copy him and give, like a half-hearted attempt, but like the way that specifically that he does groups, I'm not going to quite be able to match. But the curriculum that you guys are delivering, it's, if we all follow it the way that it's taught, then we're delivering the effect that the research shows works. And Mace, also, you opened the door for me to talk about jiu-jitsu. I think that a big reason that therapists maybe are resistant to that also is that they're not okay with sucking at it. Yeah. Especially if they've, over the course of a career have shaped themselves and, into being at least proficient at their way of running groups, starting and learning a whole new thing, especially where you have to read from a manual, you feel like, as a therapist, I remember I felt like I'd taken a step back skill-wise. And, with jiu-jitsu, it was probably 6 months deep into me training that I finally won a match. Not even a match, it was just in training. Like, I got my butt kicked by dudes 50, 60 pounds lighter than me, just worked, tying me in a knot, in a pretzel. And it's kind of humiliating, and you have to have the humility to be able to say, okay, well, there's something to this, obviously. The evidence of jiu-jitsu is all over the fight world. It works, absolutely. So I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to drill these things the way that I was taught so I can learn it and have the discipline to carry it out long term. And that's the same thing with these groups. It's, okay, I am not good at this. This is uncomfortable. I don't like how it makes me come off like I'm a brand new rookie therapist, but I'm going to stick to the script, going to follow it, going to, see if I can work through this curriculum a few different times with clients, and we'll see what happens. And that's kind of the approach I took, and now I sing the CBI, University of Cincinnati's praises wherever I can. It's like, oh yeah, this works. This is way better than what I was doing before. I was okay before, but this is way better. So I think it just takes the humility to be able to be okay with not being great.
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
I think, kind of going back on that one is, you'll see in a lot of the literature, so if we're looking at risk-need responsivity, there's the other one of fidelity. So a lot of the literature we're seeing says facilitating a poorly run group does more harm than doing no group at all. So that's where, when we look at the elements of, we're not just going to come train you and say, off you go. Well, some agencies are like that, but there's that element of coaching that comes into play of, let's, look at some folks who might be proficient in this, train them as coaches, and get people comfortable with it, because training fatigue happens. We've got some folks who are going to be in their 5th day of training tomorrow, and, hopefully they're not going to be looking like an extra from The Walking Dead and just, brain dead, but it's a lot of information, and that retention kind of, we're human, right? And but sticking to that fidelity and delivering it exactly as is, it's that top notch. And it's the same thing with driving. We train 16-year-olds to drive a certain way. I think I struck a nerve, but
I can't believe when I was 16 that they gave me a license. I just can't believe it. And I have a son who's 7, and I'm like, oh my, what? In in 9 years he's going to get a license? No, I'm terrified.
But that's the thing, right? Is we go to driver's ed, they teach us how to drive perfectly, but then we say you get this plastic thing that says, okay, get on the highway, and off you go, and you're the best driver ever. And I think we can agree that if it sprinkles a little bit, people forget how to drive, or people get comfortable. People, start taking selfies while they're driving, or got to snap the grams and all that, hipster stuff, whatever. But, we start adapting things, and we're no longer doing it the way that we were originally trained, and things happen, accidents happen, and that's kind of the same element that we see in these groups. Is today we're trained on this, but if that binder goes on the shelf for 4 months or so, collects dust, and then you go to do it, you're going to forget those elements. So it's just that consistency.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean, speaking of the days of training, how impressed are you guys with the Weber County Sheriff's Office, the officers?
They're killing it.
Of everybody, I am so
killing
impressed
it, yeah.
with the officers so far in all these trainings. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously I see therapists in a different light, but because this is what we do all day or day, but like with officers, how well they've adapted to this and their attitudes. I've just heard so many horror stories about officers' attitudes, and I just have seen the exact opposite. Like,
They're
there's
amazing
definitely
there.
something in the water here. So shout out to Weber County.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen people who are brand new to the job, to people who've been here for a while, but the buy-in is going to be absolutely tremendous. That trickle-down effect of how that's going to impact other people. There's going to be some amazing things that are going to be happening based off of that.
It's really cool to hear, officers who, I say when I worked in a facility, I would work that weird shift that was like 3 to 11. So the first 2 hours of my shift was like all business, right? And then after 5, it was like a whole different facility because most of the business staff or clinical staff left, and it was just security staff left. And so they'd be like night and day. And, for them to come to this training with an open mind and say, like, I already see how I could use this to do my job more effectively, or I'm already thinking of they've been super cool with us here and shared kind of some stories of folks that they work with on a day-to-day. And like, I have definitely somebody who's behind the walls here that I could sit down and do this with, and they would get something out of it. And so to like come to the job with that attitude, like they don't have to do that. That's, not a requirement, but the fact that they're so motivated to come in and say, hey, I have this new tool that I could use and it might make a difference in someone's life. So if I have 10 minutes that I could spend with someone while they're here and it would make a difference, then I'm excited about that possibility. So super cool to hear that.
Yeah, and this is why sometimes when you guys were talking about, like, Jamie, I think it's disappointing, like when you were saying, like, if you have the skill and you say your stuff is good, let's put it to the test, right? The thing is I think one of the criticisms too about EBP is that it tends to be a cookbook approach, right? I'm sure you guys have heard that before. And I mean, your guys is this is where I've been fascinated with the officers and the therapists, is it literally tells you, say this, write this, discuss this, and that's where, like Jeff was saying, people get uncomfortable. But there's this thing that I learned about, and I think it's, I learned it from that, I listened to another podcast, it's a fallacy of authority. Do you remember? Basically, like, the replication piece is what's huge, because Jeff and I, we have a mentor of ours. I think it's safe to call him a mentor, named Mike Hanley. He's one of the best therapists I've ever worked with, and I think he's been doing this for 30 plus years now. And I'm telling you, I sit in a group with that guy, and just observe, and I'm like, Jesus, is my life changing too for the better? Like, I just hear him say things, but it's so weird. Like, if I tried to measure what's happening there, it's so difficult. It's intangible. Like, it's amazing what the dude says, but he's got like these phrases and the cadence of his voice and he's
the whole package.
He sings. He's like on CDs and stuff too. So like it's all these things, and I'm like, dude, you can't replicate that. You cannot take that and turn that into a group. And if I tried, I'd look like an idiot. Like, and our groups could not be more different. My groups compared to Mike's groups could not be more different. But I can't replicate those things. And so I think to the degree that you guys have a standardization of doing this, like, I'd say, a cookbook is a good thing. Like, that's good.
Yeah.
And then everybody, as long as they're sticking to the cookbook, has their own personality flavor that they bring to the session, which is where you make it your own.
Yeah.
But initially, the robotic nature of it, I think that's just par for the course. And that's not anything to be uncomfortable with. Like, that's a group for you, too, to learn from and get better at.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think you make a good point. And it's one of the things that I think is a big misconception, that it has to be robotic and exactly the same. Like Jeff said, he's never going to be you, and you're never going to be him. And you might have your own, tricks up your sleeve, things that work really well for you. But if he tries it, it's going to be a flop. And that's just, like, you're different humans. And that's okay. It's not that, like, rigid. So, if you just take a basic thing, if I gave you both a recipe for making chocolate chip cookies, and Jeff goes out and buys, like, the high-end fancy chocolate and everything, like all the like best ingredients in the world, and you just go buy store brand and you both just stick to the recipe, you're going to end up with chocolate chip cookies, and it's going to be fine, right? So that's totally fine. And maybe you start off with like a little wooden spoon and a little plastic bowl, and that's what you're working with. And over time, you build up and get fancier gear and equipment, and you're still using that same recipe, and it's still working for you. You're still getting cookies out of it, and maybe, you know, they get a little better over time, but at the end of the day, like, still a good cookie. Even if you're starting at the basics, it's fine. So, I mean, there's room for those kinds of things that make it yours, as long as you don't, you know, drop the chocolate chips and decide to throw oats and raisins in there, because then you're putting out something different, right?
Just thinking to himself right now, my mom would make the best chocolate chip cookies.
I kind of want some cookies right now.
His mom's the sweetest lady on planet Earth. I always get jealous because I'm making fun of him. It's like you're jealous, but you make fun of the kid who's like, hey, where's my mom bringing me cookies to work and stuff? Just in terms of time here, before we, you know, because I know you guys have stuff to do, but Jamie, I wanted you, because Eric was kind of talking about this earlier, like it's kind of exciting to see the officers buy into this, and we're really excited too about the project that we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I wonder maybe, and I can weigh in on this as well, but can you maybe, for listeners, to just say what all this trading's about, what we're trying to accomplish, and what we're trying to do for Weber County, specifically our clients who are leaving the Weber County Jail and re-entering our community.
Yeah, so our project is designed to work with justice-involved individuals who are struggling with mental illness and substance use issues simultaneously. So that's a really prevalent issue. Folks are dealing with that across the country for sure. And there's not like a pristine model for how to work with that subgroup. And so what we've worked together to kind of put together and test out here is a treatment or intervention path that they can start when they're in the jail. And so it would start with a really thorough assessment in the beginning, and then a detailed case plan that maps to that assessment, and then we would get them in the right groups to work on some of the things that are tailored specifically to their needs, and then hopefully continue that as they transition back to the community so that they have really good skill set and really good tools at their disposal when they get out, but also kind of build that support system and make sure they can maintain that when they leave. So that's kind of the design of the project, and we're going to also test it through a randomized controlled trial. So hats off to you guys for coordinating between all of these agencies and getting folks on board, and for being like badasses and willing to put it to the test.
Yeah, and man, I'm always up for a challenge. That's always that's good. But so we literally are putting it to the test.
Yeah.
Can you give a Cliff Notes explanation of what a randomized control trial is?
Sure. Randomized control trial is sort of the gold standard. So if you were going to do a research study, that's the design you would want to use. And with that, you would identify, basically in a nutshell, a group of people that would be eligible to get whatever program it is you're offering. And of those people who are eligible, you're going to randomly assign some of them to get it and some of them to not get it. And then you're going to follow them over time and see how those two groups fare. If your intervention is working, which fingers crossed yours is going to be. It will. Those folks who kind of go down that treatment track will have lower recidivism rates at the end compared to those who did not go down that treatment track.
Okay. Excellent. So in other words, we're comparing two people that are getting kind of treatment as usual, and so none of these fancy dancy interventions, and then the people who do get those, and then comparing their further involvement in the criminal justice system
right.
long term. Okay, excellent. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of that too. It was I just look back all the way. I mean, we're just so fortunate to have made that decision to go out to Cincinnati back in the that was really cool. And speaking of which, just like I guess some PR for you guys. for listeners, if they want to get into something like this, I know you guys have a training institute, and I know obviously when the world came to an end, all that was pretty affected. It was like right before. Normally it's in May, yeah.
We do two,
Yeah.
one in May and one in August every year. And the cool thing is, like, pandemic shut it down, so we didn't do it.
That's the
this
cool
year.
thing?
That's not the cool thing, but kind of is the cool thing.
What's the good news?
The good news is that because of that and our commitment to helping people in the field, we've converted a lot of our stuff to virtual, which has allowed us to do virtual training institutes, and we're doing those more frequently. So instead of offering 10 different things that you could sign up for any one and come to Cincinnati and do the training, every month or so we're doing a virtual training institute where there's a certain number of slots people can sign up, so it doesn't have to be your whole group. Like if just one of you needed to be trained in something, or you got a new staff who just one person needed to be trained, you could just have that person sign up and do that training. And so we're able to do them more frequently and offer them to agencies who have that kind of unique need where they might just need one or two people trained instead of a whole bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I really like going out to Cincinnati. Like, it's kind of a different. Have you guys noticed have you guys tried to buy alcohol since you've been here in Utah at all? It's super fun when you try.
Like a store or anywhere?
Anywhere. Like you go into a store. Like when we went to the gas station that one time that was across the street, and I saw just right at the checkout stand, I'm like, whoa. It was the most amazing selection of alcohol I've ever seen, because everything here you have to go to a liquor store.
Okay.
Yeah, you can buy like beer, which I think just recently they made it actual beer. It wasn't like...
They finally stepped up.
Yeah, the water stuff. The breweries are like, we ain't making that nonsense anymore. So, so both options then, in person and virtual then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no. We're not doing the in-person institutes right now.
Okay.
Just the virtual.
Yeah.
So those are an option, and we're doing probably one a month, something like that.
One a month.
That's way more frequent then.
Yeah, but they're not like the full. You don't get like the full menu of training options. Just one of our staff members might do one curriculum training virtually per month, and so however many people it might be,
But roundabout, one way or another, you're going to find a month that's going to fit what you need. So if somebody is otherwise interested in that, where do they go? What do they need to do to get set up with you guys? Maybe not you guys specifically, but with UCCI.
They can go to uc.edu /corrections, and right there on our page you're going to be able to navigate and see what's being offered, and there's contact information that you can reach out to us, and they'll direct you to the right person.
You weren't comfortable giving your home address? Yeah, don't do that. Yeah. But and obviously, just if they Google UCCI correction or UC Corrections Institute,
they'll find us. And we're also on all the social medias. I'm not a social media user really, so I don't know what they are, but we're also on social media.
There you go. Yeah,
So.
I can't emphasize enough. That I just, if you're a budding therapist getting into the field and you need to learn a skill, and particularly like if you've chosen to work with justice-involved clients, I just can't think of a better institution that puts this forward. I said when I introduced them yesterday, or the first day, I was saying they're like a Tony Robbins seminar. And Eric's exceeded that now, so yeah, that's good.
With kind of a hint of Sesame Street.
Yeah, there you go. But no, I mean, I have always been really impressed, and I thank you guys for helping me become a better therapist for sure.
Well, that's a huge compliment.
Yeah,
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it. I for sure attribute a lot of my growth clinically to the things that you guys have taught me, so I really appreciate that. So anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
I just echo what you're saying. I'm your biggest salesman here in Utah. Yeah. So appreciate you guys coming out and also taking time to do this podcast with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we love working with you guys, and really proud to partner with such great skilled therapists and people who are so committed to doing evidence-based practices and doing it well and making a difference. And I know you guys are really doing that work throughout Utah and otherwise, right? You're expanding. So we're excited to see what you guys do next, and always thrilled to partner with you.
Cool. Do you guys have to give a shout out to anybody before we wrap up?
I mean, I guess we could give a shout out to all our coworkers at UCCI who are also a big part of the team. We couldn't do all of this without them. And going to give a shout out to my husband, Tony, because he's a fan of your podcast.
Tony,
Shout out
get
to-
your friends to subscribe, bro. 5 stars. If you're going to give us 1, just go away. 5 only.
I'll shout out to my mom and my cat. Why not? Go Awesome. That's his name.
There you go.
So,
Awesome.
No shocker, right? My
Yeah.
cat's name would be Awesome.
There you go. Cool. Well, hey, thank you guys so much, okay? And that's a wrap. And thanks for listening to the Guerrilla Social Work Podcast with your hosts, Jeff Moore and Mace Warren. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into all things related to forensic psychotherapy. As always, you can head over to utahsbesttherapy.com to check out our program and check out all the links and resources in the show notes. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and wherever you prefer to get your listener fix. Please share this episode with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating, which really helps us out. You guys are awesome. We'd like to stay and chat longer, but we're lying. Good night.